Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our screening of the final selection, Hotel Rwanda, 2004, in our current miniseries, The Dark Continent Hollywood Style, directed by Terry George with Don Cheadle, Sophie Okonedo, and Nick Nolte. The soundtrack features songs written for the film by Haitian composer Wyclef Jean and Deborah Cox, and music for it was written by Rupert Gregson Williams, Andrea Guerra, and the Afro-Celt sound system. The screenplay was written by George, who collaborated with Keir Pearson, who was working in Tanzania when he heard about the story of the Hotel des Mille Collines in Kigali, Rwanda. He interviewed many refugees from the Rwandan genocide, spent a year developing a first draft, and then flew to Los Angeles to try to sell it. Terry George had been looking for a script that would tell this story from a human point of view rather than a political one, and the two men agreed to collaborate to bring the project to fruition. They tried not to focus on the horrific elements of the story so as not to give the audience an excuse to avoid seeing it. Rather, every effort was made to help the audience identify the love story between Paul Rusesabagina and his wife Tatiana. Together, they portrayed Paul as an unflappable and diplomatic humanitarian in the face of indescribable brutality. Upon completion of the film, the producers joined with the UN Foundation to create the International Fund for Rwanda, which supports the UN Development Program initiatives assisting Rwandan survivors. Hotel Rwanda is based on the story of Rusesabagina, the manager of the hotel, which was owned by the Belgian company Sabina, during the period of the genocide in 1994. Paul managed to save the lives of his family and more than 1,000 Tutsi refugees by sheltering them in his hotel. Many films like this one have met with controversy, and Hotel Rwanda is no exception. In 2008, the book, Hotel Rwanda, or the Tutsi Genocide as Seen by Hollywood, was published. The authors conducted interviews with 74 people who stayed in the hotel during the genocide, who alleged that Paul had extorted money from hotel guests from rooms and food. They also claimed that he provided the Rwandan army commander Bizimungu with a list of names and room numbers, but that UN observers managed to change the room numbers of those people who were most vulnerable. Paul was consulted during the writing of the film and categorically denied all the accusations, and both he and Tatiana were present throughout the filming of the movie. Although the film is set in Kigali, Rwanda, it was filmed primarily in Johannesburg, South Africa, which is the heart of the film industry in Africa. Many of the extras were Rwandan refugees. Hotel Rwanda was met with both critical and modest financial success upon its release. It earned nearly $34 million on its budget of $17.5 million. The reviews were largely positive on Rotten Tomatoes. The consensus reads that the film is a sobering and heartfelt film about a massacre which took place in Rwanda while most of the world looked away. William Arnold, writing in the Seattle Intelligencer, said that Cheadle is simply terrific, convincing us with every move and gesture that he's a resourceful everyman elevated to genuine heroism by struggling to do the right thing. Hotel Rwanda was listed on many critics' top 10 lists for 2004 and on the American Film Institute's list of top 100 most inspirational movies of all time. Plot summary. In 1994, the classification of the native population into Hutus and Tutsis, set in place by the colonial Belgians, was deeply ingrained in the Rwandan mentality despite Rwandans' recent independence. Under Belgian rule, the Tutsis had been placed in a position of political dominance, despite the fact that the Hutu population was far more numerous. After independence, the dominant Hutu population assumed power, with the RTM radio station providing the strength behind the Hutu regime. Paul Rusesabagina, a Hutu married to a Tutsi woman, was the manager of the luxurious Hotel des Mille Collines in Kigali. The hotel catered primarily to wealthy white Westerners. Paul, who knew how to work the system for the benefit of his guests and Sabina, was proud that most of the customers he met in his professional capacity treated him with great respect. During the period of the genocide in the spring of 1994, he sheltered over 1,000 Tutsi refugees in the hotel, while atrocities raged outside his door. These events went relatively unnoticed by the rest of the world. In only 3 months, more than 1 million Tutsis were slaughtered in the face of these unspeakable actions. And inspired by his love for his family, Paul summoned up the courage to protect the refugees by feeding and housing them and cajoling and bribing a cadre of corrupt government officials to turn a blind eye on his efforts. Fun facts about the film. Idi Amin was the leader of the Rwandan government during the period of the genocide. When Paul climbs out of his van and lands in the killing fields, some of the people lying on the ground were refugees who had actually been through the atrocities. Cheadle had great difficulty discussing the scene where Paul breaks down in the hotel while tying his tie. When Paul describes to Tatiana how he bribed the Ugandan Minister of Public Health with a new VW to transfer her to Kigali so he could be with her, he's really telling a true story. The actor who played Amin's 4-star General Bizimungu had been in a South African soap opera for over 10 years when he was chosen to appear in the movie. The character of Colonel Oliver, played by Nick Nolte, was based on Senator Romeo Dallaire, now a lieutenant general retired from the Canadian Armed Forces, who recounted his own experiences in a book, which later was made into the 2007 film Shake Hands with the Devil. Several real officials appear in archival footage included in the film, including Rwandan patriotic leader, now President Paul Kagame. While Pearson was writing his first draft, he called the Rwandan embassy in Washington to try to get in contact with Rusesabagina, and the woman who answered the phone had been a survivor who had actually stayed in the hotel. The character of Jack Douglas was based on the Polish photojournalist Stefan Stek, who recorded the Gikondi massacre. The film was also given an R rating, but the producers was originally given an R rating, but the producers appealed, and the film was re-rated to PG-13. It is one of very few films that have ever been re-rated without being re-edited. At around 1 hour, 10 minutes into the film, UN peacekeeping troops are shown with Pakistani flag bands on their sleeves. In 1994, Pakistan was by far the largest contributor to the UN peacekeeping force. When Paul speaks to the reporters at the hotel, an image of Bill Clinton as Time magazine's Man of the Year can be seen in the background. Original UN footage was used in the scenes of the refugees being loaded into trucks for their evacuation to the airport. As a bus pulls out of the hotel carrying a group of refugees, we see a woman holding a dog peering out one of the windows. This was a piece of footage actually taken by a Hutu observer. Paul had to use water from the hotel's swimming pool from drinking water after the Rwandan authorities cut off the hotel's water supply. Each refugee received 2 rations, one at 8 a.m. and one at 5 p.m. The UN camp for the refugees was actually quite squalid, not a tent camp as shown in the film. Wyclef Jean, a Haitian-American musician, rapper, and actor, wrote the film's signature song, Million Voices, sung over the closing credits. In 3 days, he was inspired by the Rwandan genocide as a metaphor for recent events in his native Haiti. All profits from the song go to the Rwandan Survivors Fund. Million Voices was nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Original Song. Things to look for. The picture of Bill Clinton as Time magazine's Man of the Year on the wall behind Paul during the press conference. Listen to the African music in the score. Note the shot of the woman and her dog in the bus bound for the airport. the scene in which Paul gets lost and jumps out of his vehicle into what he perceives as a killing field, the beautiful signature song Million Voices, which, utilizing a children's choir singing both English and African dialect, sung over the closing credits, the scene in which Paul breaks down while tying his tie, Paul's numerous attempts to bribe Hutu officials. Now it's time to visit Hotel Rwanda. Sit back, settle down. Please remember it may take a few minutes for the film to roll. Enjoy.